Okay, so Uruguay were playing Namibia in Lyon. It's finished 36 points to 26 to Uruguay. Fun fact, come out of this game, that is the highest points total Uruguay have ever scored in a World Cup game, and it's also the highest points total Namibia have ever scored in a World Cup game, even in defeat. Uruguay get their bonus point try, which is fantastic. They were brilliant in the second half. First half, however, it finished 20 points to 12 to Namibia. Now, I missed most of the first half, so I can't give a match review like I normally would, but I am going to discuss all the yellow cards that occurred in the second half, because I watched the second half in its entirety. I will say this with the bonus points, the bonus point try win that Uruguay get. Arata's try is the pick of the bunch. There's some great tries in there by Uruguay. They really had a fantastic second half and fully deserved their win because they had better discipline. However, they did have a player sin-binned for a high shot. Namibia had 3 players sin-binned. One of them was upgraded to a red. 2 of those yellow cards, including the one that was upgraded to a red, were, again, for high shots. All the tackles are very, very similar in the actual tackle technique. Now, I had concerns that this TMO bunker system with the review yellow, red, upgrade, downgrade system was going to have an impact on this Rugby World Cup. We've seen a lot more yellows and now we're seeing a lot more reds than in previous World Cups since the yellow red card system has been introduced. Second to that, as I've always stated, I think if it's a red on the field and it ends up being upgraded to a red, it should be a red on the field. It's just straight red it. If you think that is that dangerous or that much foul play, why doesn't the referee give a straight red? We've not seen a straight red yet in this World Cup. We haven't seen a straight red in this World Cup. We possibly will do with the new interpretations around foul play, intent to injure, and high contact. But let's get into the yellow cards, because Namibia have the first 3. First one's for a scrum infringement. Okay, not really debatable one. Stonewall yellow. It's regular infringements at scrum time, and it just so happens that one of the props is pinged, ends up in the bin. It happens. Scrum yellows are a thing. They're annoying, but they're a thing. Not really a big hoo-ha about it. The first yellow remains a yellow. The second yellow gets upgraded to a red. The Uruguayan yellow stays a yellow, and I think should have been upgraded to a red. Partly because he's knocked himself out, so he's hurt himself. But secondly, I think the Uruguay yellow reminds me of the Tom Curry red. Yeah, reminds me of the Tom Curry red in the England's first game against Argentina. Now, what is interesting to me is the tackle technique is all very, very similar. The only difference is, especially in the Uruguay one, he is static in the defensive line. That's the only difference. He's static and, as they say, passive. He's making a tackle. How can you be passive? But that's the wording from the TMO to then give to the on-field referee. The first one, there's a bit of mitigation. Both players are ducking into it. Okay. We've seen that as a precedent. I can accept that one. The second Namibian one, where he just lines him up, no attempt to duck down, and he puts his shoulder through his head, that should be a straight red. No, stop faffing around with this upgrade, downgrade BS. It's a straight red. There is no attempt to duck down there. He's lined up his head, and his primary point of contact is the Uruguayan player's head. There is no attempt to bend the knees, bend the back, lower the height. He's come in and he's led with the shoulder first before wrapping. Come on. I've seen reds given for less. So let's start refereeing with common sense here. Stop with this. It meets the yellow card threshold. I think World Rugby have got this TMO thing wrong. I think they need to give more power back to the on-field refs with the TMO's assistance, somewhat. And I think we get rid of this bunker thing, because we're now seeing inconsistencies with this bunker. Because I also think that Uruguay yellow should be a red, because he also is bolt upright. The only mitigation he gets is he's static, braced, and passive in the defensive line. How can you be passive if you are a tackler? You are active. I would say the mitigation there is he hasn't, shot out the defensive line to run in to make contact. He's set himself. Whereas the 2 Namibian ones, they're in motion when they're approaching. They're sort of running into the contact, and there's motion there. They're not standing static in a defensive line. So they're not really as set, kind of, but yeah. But to me, inconsistency there. Because all of them, it's not like they've slipped up high. They've all started high. So, back in the day, they should have all been red, surely. So, well, what are World Rugby doing here? Now, this has ultimately had an impact on the game. The 3 yellows for Namibia have actually massively swung the momentum in Uruguay's favour. And yes, you could argue 4 games in 18 days is not a particularly fair schedule. It's fairer than it used to be. It used to be 4 games in 15, so work that out as you will. But that's a massive momentum swing. The scrum yellow alone is a momentum swing, but then we're looking at these high contacts. And I don't think, from what I've seen from Tom Curry in the Argentina game, all the way through till now, any consistency. Because we've seen several upgraded to red. But if they're upgraded to red, why are they not a red on the field? And the amount that we've had missed by the on-field officials, either they're no longer confident in themselves, or they're too reliant on this bunker. I don't know what World Rugby have done since the European club season ended, and then we get into these warm-up games. But it seems to me that these referees are now relying on the bunker too much to get them out of trouble. Very similar to VAR in football. I think we need to give more power back to the referees on the field. If they do miss an instant, then the TMI go, look, we missed this, and get rid of this upgrade-downgrade BS. Either straight yellow, straight red, end of it. If it is then post-game reviewed with calm heads, and after the game, we go, well, we're going to upgrade that actually. We might have got that wrong, or we're going to downgrade that one. We were a bit hasty with that red. I can accept that. But this, you've only got 8 minutes to review it. No. Because in some cases, we're seeing them review it and go, within a minute, it's going to be a yellow. That's a red. Hang on a second, you've got 8 minutes. We're doing it in 1. So there's no consistency in that bunker. It has had an impact on this game. Now, this game, in the big scheme of things, it's not going to alter the power of, the rugby powers, really. Uruguay are going to get a bonus point win. They get that. They're the better ranked side anyway. They've got a better head-to-head record. They beat them in their last game. But if this happens in the final, and let's say we have 2 yellows for either side and one's upgraded to a red and one isn't, and they're very similar incidents, the internet's going to explode. And what I've seen with these 3 yellows for high contact is no consistency. None. Because in my book, right back in time, 20 years, all 3 of them are reds. In my book. Because none of them have made enough of an attempt, in my opinion, having used to play the game, and I've watched the game, and I've played the game since I was knee-high to a grasshopper. None of them have made a decent attempt to lower their tackle height. Now, what is interesting is 20 years ago, 2003, when Johnny Wilkinson kicks that drop goal, we were not seeing these type of high tackles. We were not seeing these head-to-head contacts. Something has happened in the last 20 years to end up at this point where we have 3 players in the sin bin for high shots, including one of them being a red, in 1 game alone. And it wasn't as if this game was played with malicious intent or nastiness or deliberate foul play. I think both sides were going at this to win, and win fairly. But the tackle technique that has come into the game, I think partly is influenced by Rugby League and AFL to a certain aspect, with some of the Southern Hemisphere coaches and some of the cross-code players, like an Israel Folau, for example, who've played all 3 codes. And some of these dual-code internationals who played a bit of league and played a bit of union, and some of the coaches who played a bit of league and played a bit of union in their playing days. That kind of fusion of the footballing codes, where in rugby league you have more upright tackles because you want to stop the offload. AFL is just brutality, and they've brought in some new tackle rules around player safety where you can't wrap the arms up into a throw tackle anymore. That was outlawed. And we've seen in rugby union more upright tackles that are resulting in head contact. We weren't seeing that 20 years ago. So bear that in mind, but something has definitely happened. And you coach tackle technique. You coach the choke tackle. You coach the tackle where you're trying to deny the opposition player an offload. These are coached things that have got into the game that have now become standard tackle technique. And suddenly, World Rugby, being reactionary, is panicking about a CTE lawsuit potentially down the line, which other sports and sports leagues and professional sports have also faced, such as the NFL, the NHL, soon to be the AFL in Australia, the NRL, other major, ice hockey and rugby league, like Super League's going to face it. These other contact sports are going to face CTE lawsuits at some point, or player welfare lawsuits for compensation or medical expenses. Rugby unions had some worrying headlines where ex-players who've been diagnosed with early onset dementia, Parkinson's. We've had a few players, obviously, with motor neurone disease, used Van der Westhuizen, Doddy Weir, for example. And again, they died young, very physical players. Doddy Weir obviously being a second row, used Van der Westhuizen, one of the most physical scrum halves, and he could have played as a centre. He was quite a big bloke. They've all passed away young. We've obviously got Rob Burrow in Rugby League, who's got motor neurone disease. So this is head contact and player welfare is a big thing. Now, other sports seem to be more proactive in their rule changes and their mandatory stand-down periods for concussion and fitness protocols. If a player's not 100% or reaching a certain fitness threshold, they don't play, or they have to do lighter training. Contact and non-contact jerseys, for example. We see that in the NHL, for example, where a player may be in a coloured jersey for light contact, non-contact, skating only, full contact, full session. Right? They have colour code jerseys in the NHL when a player is coming back from injury layoff. Doesn't matter if it's concussion or any other injury, when they're coming back into training. We're now talking about load management. Now, I know this is going to be a match review, but I'm bringing other things because I think these rule changes, plus the bad tackle technique anyway, are now having impacts on games which 20 years ago they weren't. So, as I say, it's a bit harsh in Namibia, but they only scored 6 points in the second half. There's a massive momentum swing, and the yellow cards have a part to play in that because the Uruguay yellow doesn't come to right at the end of the game. It remains a yellow. I think, for going by consistency, all three should have been reds, personally. And I will go back to the Tom Curry incident in the England-Argentina game and go from there with that being the first yellow upgraded to a red, and I will stick with that. And that is the yardstick, because that was the first decision, really tense decision made about a red-yellow upgrade downgrade. And we're going from there. So, bit of a rant this video. Yeah, Uruguay get the bonus point win. Aratas tries the pick of the bunch, but I've spent more time discussing the yellows. So there we go. Place your thoughts in the comment section below on the game and the yellow cards, and have World Rugby got this TMO bunker all right? Because I don't think they have. I think this rule's been rushed in, and I think the big concerning thing is why is this tackle technique so bad? Why are they trying to emulate the NFL? Is there too much rugby league influence and AFL influence on rugby union, especially with the Australian coaches or those who have coached or played in Australia where they would have come across the other codes? And where do we go from here? Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Place your thoughts in the comment section below. I will have some more content for you very, very soon.